German bomber. In 2006, an underwater rescue team set out to the island of Laros to recover a downed aircraft from the southeastern Aegean Sea. It was a treacherous operation in an extremely dangerous part of the ocean, but the aircraft, a Ju-52 3-meter carrier, was considered such an important piece of history that the Hellenic Air Force HAF underwater operation team was set on saving the relic. The German-built transporter was in service between 1940 and 1943 during the Battle of Laros, when Italian and British forces faced German air attacks. During the second day of battle, the craft was flying over a narrow area between the bays of Alina and Gorna, where the Germans had taken positions on the island, even after suffering extensive losses. British units were so scattered that their communications suffered and the Germans took advantage, attacking the Allies with their bombers and dropping 500 parachutists. During the battle, one of the Ju-52s was shot down, and it stayed where it fell for 50 years until the HAF team set out to bring it back to the surface. After realizing the central engine of the craft was broken apart from the fuselage, the team had to come up with a plan to recover the junker without destroying it. They decided to use a remotely operated vehicle to survey the site. Using cinching belts and ropes around the wreckage, the team realized the engine and its propeller were still intact, even though the engine was stuck to the sea floor. As they were about to bring the aircraft up to the surface, they made a shocking discovery. The remains of one of the plane's original crew members was found inside the wreckage. Along with the Coast Guard and the Hellenic Navy, HAF teams successfully hauled up the aircraft, transferring it to the Navy maintenance base where it was painstakingly restored and dismantled before being moved to the local museum for visitors to marvel over. And the crew member that was discovered was finally able to receive a proper burial. 7. Apollo 11 moon rockets. It pays to be a millionaire, especially when you have enough money to retrieve historic things from the bottom of the ocean. More than 40 years ago, when astronauts went to the moon, the massive engines that launched their spaceship dropped into the Atlantic Ocean and sank to the seafloor. Most believed they would stay there forever, but leave it up to CEO of Amazon Jeff Bezos to fund an expedition to raise the infamous engines from the ocean floor. Until then, Bezos had kept his plan a secret, but he had been secretly working on a plan to recover the F1 engine. It all started when Bezos put together a team who would use state-of-the-art deep-sea sonar equipment to locate the engines. Even though they were trapped under salt water for more than 40 years and they hit the ocean at a high velocity, the team was able to see the engines were still pretty much intact. Using a remotely operated vehicle, they located the F1 engine parts at a depth of more than 14,000 feet, 4,270 meters. After finding the parts, the team used a multi-purpose seaport vessel to retrieve enough major components to rebuild one of the engines and put it on display. But that doesn't mean there weren't a few hiccups along the way. Because the engines had been underwater for so long, many of the original serial numbers were missing, or partly missing. Even though experts originally thought the engines were from the Apollo 11 mission, identifying the exact mission they were used for has been difficult. After bringing the engine parts back to land, experts got to work to complete restoration to stabilize the hardware so they could be put on display in the Museum of Flight in Seattle. The other engines would then be sent to the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum in Washington. Thanks to the deep pockets of Amazon's founder, these historic artifacts were recovered and will eventually be put in exhibits for the world to see their incredible journey, from Earth to space and to the bottom of the ocean. 6. Ship Graveyard. Almost a century after they first set sail, a ghost fleet of historic vessels has a new lease on life in the Potomac River. Unused, abandoned, and scuttled, the ships rest in the river 30 miles, 48 kilometers south of Washington, D.C. Even though they've been rusting away, various flora and fauna have taken up residence in the ships. Osprey nests, heron rookeries, and breeding bats fill the holes of the ships in Mallows Bay. And those animals have given the vessels a second chance, with the potential of the area being named a National Marine Sanctuary by the government. With 185 ships in a 14 square mile, 36 square kilometer area, Mallows Bay is one of the most densely populated places in the Western world for storage vessels. It's become a popular place not only for wildlife, but for people to camp near the old boats and tell ghost stories at night, using these scuttled ships as a backdrop for their spooky tales. Among the ships include some from the American Civil War and others that saw service in World War II. Most date back to the early 20th century and were built during the massive shipbuilding program that was started during World War I to assist European allies. Within a year of President Woodrow Wilson starting up the Emergency Fleet Corporation to build merchant and military ships, 1 million men were working in the area cutting timber, mining iron, and building the machinery to create the ships. With such a massive undertaking and so many ships built at the same time, supply overtook demand. Nearly 400 were completed before the end of the war in November 1918. Even though some were sold, others were left where they were built, later stripped for usable parts. After the company went bust at the start of the Great Depression, most of the ships were simply abandoned. Over time, nature took over the empty hulls, making Mallows Bay a mecca for those who want to come and see countless historical vessels and hear about the history of shipbuilding in the area. Would you like to camp in Mallows Bay? Tell us in the comments below and hit subscribe while you're at it. 5. Blackbeards Cannon. In 2011, off the coast of North Carolina, an 8-foot, 2.4-meter long cannon that belonged to the infamous pirate Blackbeard was discovered. Covered in ocean debris that had hardened into what is known as concretion, the cannon was retrieved by experts and brought to the North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources for restoration. Along with the cannon, bits of rope, lead shot, and gold dust were found cased around the artifact. Iron shackles that were used in the slave trade and vintage wine glasses were also uncovered. As the captain of the Queen Anne's Revenge, Blackbeard sailed the French slave ship towards Charleston, South Carolina, where he demanded money and goods from the townspeople. Grounding his ship before it sank, the pirate and his crew likely removed the treasure trove of silver before they were killed. In fact, rumors still circulate that Blackbeard hid some of his booty nearby, leading archaeologists to continue searching for the Outer Banks and its surrounding area for any hint of the treasure. Although they might not have found chests filled with gold, various artifacts have been recovered around the area since 1997, with many of them on display in North Carolina museums. It took a few weeks of preparation for divers to come up with a plan to save the sand-encased cannon. But when they finally raised the ancient cannon from the ocean floor, they soon realized they were holding a piece of history. 4. Mayan salt kitchens. 1,000 years after the Mayans ruled South America, archaeologists have made an astounding breakthrough in Belize. Throughout the rainforests of Central America, the Maya constructed stone temples and palaces. Even though they seemed to be thriving, they were missing one thing: access to salt normally found along the coast, like these salt flats on the Yucatan Peninsula. Researchers have been scratching their heads for centuries trying to understand how the inland Maya maintained their supplies of salt. But this discovery in Belize of a salt kitchen where brine was boiled in clay pots seems to have answered this mystery. Researchers found the kitchen at a site known as Equenal, where they also located a residence and areas for salting fish, but they still don't know just how old the site was. Using radiocarbon dating on wood and thatched roofs found on the building, researchers were able to determine that the salt kitchens located there were in use until the cities were eventually abandoned by 900 AD. Researchers also believe that there were up to 10 salt kitchens in production at the site, which is now known as the Paynes Creek Salt Works. But locating the salt kitchens wasn't as easy as you might think. The buildings at Equenal were located on the seafloor, which meant researchers had to dive underwater to gather artifacts. Luckily, their hard work paid off, giving researchers an inside look at the ancient Mayan practice and how remote villages inland received this basic dietary commodity during the classic Maya civilization. 3. Ancient naval relics. Off the coast of Sicily, underwater archaeologists uncovered a treasure trove of artifacts dating back 2,000 years. Helmets, armor, and weapons were found that date back to the first ancient naval battle, the Battle of the Agadi Island, that took place in 241 BC during the First Punic War. After more than 20 years of battling Carthaginians, the Romans finally gained a foothold over their enemies. They lay in wait, trapping the enemy and blocking their route to the sea, sinking 50 Carthaginian ships and killing up to 10,000 men. This battle, that culminated after so many years of struggling, would set the Romans on a path towards European domination. For more than 2 millennia, the priceless artifacts sat undisturbed on the seabed in an area that stretched over 3.11 miles, 5 kilometers. British archaeologists began the process of retrieving the artifacts in 2013, diving to a depth of 328 feet, 100 meters to uncover them. Before this discovery in the Mediterranean, there had never been an ancient battle site previously discovered. Among the objects found included warship rams, Greco-Roman amphorae, which are tall ancient jars that have 2 handles and a narrow neck and are used to store food or drink. Other incredible discoveries include 3 bronze Montefortino-style helmets that were used by the Celtics and later the Romans. One of the most unique finds is an iron sword measuring 27.5 inches long and almost 2 inches wide, 70 centimeters long and 5 centimeters wide. After restoring the objects, they'll be analyzed and then added to an exhibition at the Museum of the Battle of Igadi for treasure hunters and historic buffs alike to study. 2. Sunken Swedish settlement. At the bottom of the Baltic Sea, Swedish divers made a rare discovery that dates back 11,000 years. Incredibly old artifacts that experts now think are tied to hunter-gatherers were discovered by a team working for the Swedish National Heritage Board who were excavating underwater. The artifacts date back to Swedes from the Stone Age and include an abandoned harpoon carving from animal bone, as well as wood and antlers that were deposited there during the Stone Age. The area is believed to be a lagoon that experts believe was close to a nearby Swedish settlement. The chemistry of the lagoon with its rich sediment is the key to keeping everything so well preserved. Wood pieces, flint tools, animal horns, and bones, including those of a cattle that died off in the early 1600s, were also found in remarkably good condition. Thanks to the lack of oxygen and the abundance of sediment, many of the remnants still look like they've just been placed there. The one-of-a-kind Stone Age artifacts offer a glimpse into the lives of ancient Swedes and may give insight into what life was like 11,000 years ago. 1. Sunken Egyptian cities. When you think of ancient Egypt, more than likely pyramids instantly come to mind. But there are other mysteries still lurking underfoot, and not necessarily beneath the desert sands surrounding this ancient land. 2 ancient cities, Thonis Heracleion and Canopus, were abandoned long ago, but they were not only forgotten by time, they were consumed by the sea, and now sit under the murky waters of the old port. Thonis Heracleion was founded around the 8th century BCE as a trading port for the region. Its location near the mouth of the Nile made it a bustling hub with temples built by ancient Greeks and ancient texts with rare inscriptions. Sadly, a number of natural disasters lashed the city, including earthquakes, tsunamis, and floods. And at the end of the 2nd century BCE, the land became so saturated by water that the hard clay of the island turned to liquid, and all the buildings in the ancient city collapsed into the water. Over the next few centuries, the remnants of the once great city sank beneath the waves. In the 1930s, an RAF commander was flying over the bay when he noticed something in the water. After reporting it, experts flocked to the area, only to be amazed when they realized they had rediscovered the ancient city. In 1996, one of the most significant research projects began in the bay, with the Egyptian Supreme Council of Antiquities using sonar equipment to scan the ocean floor. It would take until the year 2004 for only 5% of the city's total area to be explored by archaeologists, who located countless artifacts including temples, ancient columns, and other architectural elements. Smaller treasure troves of bronze, ceramic, and gold have been found and brought up to the surface, as well as ancient statues of the god Osiris and 70 ancient vessels. Research continues on the underwater city to reveal more of its secrets hidden in the canals, islands, and old ports of the ancient city, leading experts to fantasize about what treasures are still waiting to be uncovered. Thanks for watching. Which one of these incredible discoveries fascinated you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these. See you next time. Bye.